everybody, welcome to another True Review. I am of course True, your Million G Gamer, and today I'm bringing you Outbreak, the Nightmare Chronicles on the Xbox One, which is currently available on the Microsoft Store as we speak for $4.99. It is unfortunately only available in the US region, as is the other parts of the Outbreak series as today. So a European release is probably very unlikely at this stage, though not impossible. Alone. Let's have a look at the description then. As the city burns and the countryside is engulfed by the epidemic, you're now alone and forced to live with this new reality. Monstrous beasts and disfigured remnants roam freely, with their numbers increasing rapidly. Scattered and separated from your fellow survivors, you fled into a large manor estate to escape the relentless horde. Your only goal now is to survive. Explore the manor, locate supplies and find a way to wake from this nightmare, but somehow you know your fate is already sealed. Outbreak, the Nightmare Chronicles is an unforgiving survival horror experience. Death lurks around each door as you fight to survive with the limited supplies at your disposal. Search rooms thoroughly and make the right choice when to fight or flee from the monstrosities. Featuring classic hardcore survival horror gameplay in a directed single-player experience, you'll need to stay on your toes to stay alive. You have limited inventory and you'll need to leverage supply caches to store your equipment for use later. Saving your game is also highly restrictive and you'll need to locate the means to record your progress as you explore. Lydia's adventure is just the beginning. Can you survive the Chronicles and determine the fate of the other survivors? So Outbreak the New Chronicles is actually the third game in this series, which as today only remains across in North America. The first game being just simply called Outbreak, which was a top-down survival game. Second being Outbreak the New Nightmare, which was more akin to this one, which is like kind of classic old-school Resident Evil like camera adventure. Now, as the description describes, you play as Lydia, who has managed to escape from, I believe, the events of the second game. Although, to be honest with you, I played the second game quite some time ago, so I can't remember if that is the case or not. So apologies if that is incorrect. But regardless, she's been separated from her companions because they all dive into a river. She's climbed out and discovered this mansion, which she managed to find an unlocked window, which leads her into a kind of safe locked room. She quickly gets armed with a pistol, and there's a supply cache in there with some painkillers, which are technically this game, with a Resident Evil reference, is technically this game's green herbs to heal you up when you get damaged by the various monstrosities, as the game describes it. So the general progression of the game is you find various memos around, and they would generally give you story background, but some of them do give you story hints in terms of working out door locks. Now, the game kindly signposts these quite a bit by highlighting any important text in yellow, so it is very difficult to miss these actual clues. You just got to basically associate the right code with the right door. I mean, the first one is in the very first room, for example. It's on the bed, and the passcode is simply 1234. You're safe in this room until you've opened that door and exit, but you know, this is where the game's first issue starts to present itself, in this very first room. With the static camera, the problem always remains is that when you change camera angle, your movements obviously change as well. So you do find a lot of the time you are running in and out of camera angles very, very frequently, and it becomes very disorientated. And this was a problem with the Resident Evil series as well. So it's not just common to Outbreak. So we're not just picking on the indie game here for the sake of it. It's a problem with the whole genre. This can be negated slightly if you do choose to use the classic tank controls, but even then it is still present, but it is more prevalent with the modern day controls, because they do have a strange knack of flicking between scenes rather rapidly, which can get a very bit disorientating and annoying, especially when there's a threat in the room. But you exit the first room and you find your first enemy. You can either take that down with the knife, which is unadvisable, or you can arm yourself with the pistol and 15 rounds that you have. Combat is handled by a simple system as per Resident Evil. You hold your left trigger down to raise your weapon, and you press the right trigger to fire or attack if you're using a melee weapon to try and attack the creatures. There's no method of dodging. If you want to dodge, you have to basically lower your weapon and move away, and in classic Resident Evil style, you cannot move and attack at the same time. You soon learn quickly from taking down the first zombie that these guys take a lot of hits. You literally take about 10 hits for your first zombie to go down, and when your clip only holds 15, you soon quickly realise that ammunition management is going to be key to this game, as it generally is with all survival horror titles, where you have to manage a limited number of resources. So juggling the ammo, the guns and the healing items, especially, and keys as well, is very difficult to do when you are limited to just 6 inventory slots with no ability to drop items unless you're able to use them or put them in a supply cache. In terms of graphics, well, straight off the bat, it's not obviously up to this level of graphical fidelity that we usually expect for this generation of consoles, but pleasingly to say, this is the best looking game in the Outbreak franchise. The environments themselves are just find a good level of detail. You feel this is a coherent mansion in a way, of the portion of it you're allowed to explore. You get the idea that it is a coherent mansion and something that could be a genuine functioning facility. What does let the game down is probably the character models. To me, they look a bit too clean and too shiny. Especially some of the zombies, but probably the worst offending character and how they look is the main player character, which is Lydia. She kind of looks okay, but she moves very odd. Her movement is, I don't really know how to describe it. I've never seen anybody walk like it in their life. It's kind of like a weird kind of march, but and especially when she's holding a weapon. It's not so bad when she's holding a pistol, but when she's holding like an assault rifle or a rocket launcher, and she's just marching along, arms at the side of her like the thing's made out of plywood. It's a very, very odd look to it. The zombies tend to fare a little bit better, or the enemies tend to fare a little bit better, although they do have some issues where they seem to be gliding across the surface of the floor on occasions, which does seem a little bit odd. And we do have some strange ragdolly kind of physics going on, where an enemy does die, they fall and slump on walls and furniture and stuff, and it can cause limbs to do very exaggerated and strange movements. Probably the worst offender is the enemy, the big green lizard enemies, which are akin to the hunters from Resident Evil. Their death position is a little bit suggestive, shall I say, and I'll leave it at that. There is it is Xbox One X enhanced, this game as well. Obviously, you generally have to have the visual quality there to benefit from this an awful lot more. Whilst I didn't expect the higher resolution to make much of an impact on this, on checking it on both my two Xboxes, my original Xbox One and the X, I can say it does look significantly better on the X. Although it's not a deal breaker, you know, you're not gaining that much more detail there, but it does look more smoother and a little bit more polished on the X, definitely. So it is nice to see that these smaller games and smaller companies are trying to take advantage of the X's ability to put out higher resolutions there and better quality visuals. So sound of music, let's have a little listen to the game's soundtrack for a moment. Sound of music is an area where the game does relatively well. Mostly parks, I feel like a lot of the sound effects are actually taken from Resident Evil. The menu navigation sound, for example, is, I mean, to my naked ear, it's identical to what they use in Resident Evil. The zombie groans are very reminiscent as well, though a zombie groan is a zombie groan, I suppose. I don't know how you could say it is the exact same one, but put it this way, they do sound very, very similar. Same as the pattern of feet and footsteps as well. Very, very reminiscent of the Resident Evil games. So if they're not not exactly the same, they are a very good imitation of those, which all make the game stronger for what it is. Musically, the game's pretty strong as well. It's got those classic kind of like piano beats that go on in some of the Resident Evil games, where you enter a room and you just don't know what's off the camera. They could be an enemy literally meters away from you. They do add kind of a little bit of suspense into proceedings, and as I say, the sound effects work really well to highlight there is an enemy in the room with the groans and footsteps sometimes, but sometimes the enemies do remain silent just to catch you a little bit unawares there. So overall then, Outbreak the Nightmare Chronicles represents a big step for the series. It's definitely the best entry in the series by a country mile. The graphics are an awful lot better, the environment's a lot cleaner, the combat system has been cleaned up, and the inventory management is a lot better as well. And this is the closest the game has been to the classic Resident Evil. The game does still have some issues, however. There's a problem with the enemies gliding all over the place, as I mentioned previously. This is a little bit disconcerting and looks a little bit odd there, and the animation of the main character probably needs some work on as well. But other than that, it plays relatively well, and I personally enjoyed it for the amount of time it took me to complete. Now, I've actually ran through the game in its entirety 3 times now. The first time I streamed the game, it took me about 2 hours to get through, because this is only episode 1 of the Nightmare Chronicles. The game's going to eventually have, I think, 4 episodes to form the full story, but nevertheless 2 hours to learn the mechanics, die quite a lot of times, and learn that I should have reserved the ammunition an awful lot better than I did do, to muddle through the game in about 2 hours. I think represents decent value. Second playthrough in the game, because I was armed with the knowledge of what to do, where to go, I was significantly quicker. It only took me about 50 minutes to actually get through the game from start to finish. And the third playthrough, which was kind of like a messing around playthrough to test various things. But overall, I enjoyed my time with Outbreak, and I think, like I say, for $5 it represents a great value. You've got to go into this with the mind it's not Resident Evil. Don't compare it. You have to compare it to Resident Evil, but obviously don't hold it up to the same standards as Resident Evil. The main factor is, as per always, is the game fun to play, and yes, I enjoyed my time with Outbreak, and I look forward to seeing what the future episodes hold for Lydia as she escapes the first part of her nightmare there. So I'm going to there's no reason, the sale really doesn't come into a factor with it here, because it's only $5. So it's a question of, is it a disaster, or do you buy it? If you like the Resident Evil games, then buy it. If you want a quick fire action adventure, buy it. If you want some quick easy achievements, because none of the achievements surprisingly are actually attached to story progression, you can literally just grind the achievements out, because they are for killing X amount of enemies, solving X amount of puzzles, getting X amount of critical shots, and healing a certain amount of times. That's pretty much the entire list. So if you want easy achievements, buy it, because you don't even have to play the game if you don't want to. You can just simply grind out the achievements in the most effective way possible. But that'd be a shame, because, like I say, this is definitely the best entry in the series, and there is some definite fun to be had here. So definite buy from me. Look forward to the second part of this. Hopefully we've not got too long a wait for it, because that's one of the bugbears I have with episodic gaming, but that's a story for another video. So definite buy from me. I definitely recommend Outbreak the Nightmare Chronicles as a very fun title to play, and if you do decide to buy it, I do hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.